Hello, this is Luis Acevedo, and today with my friend and classmate Jader Martínez, we would like to talk about a really heavy and important question. Why haven't governments been able to stop famine? You see, when most people think about famine, the immediate idea that comes to mind it's like, oh, there is just not enough food, or the planet cannot produce enough, and things like that. But actually, if we look at the data, that's a big mistake because global famine is not a production problem at all, it is a political choice. So think about it for a second. Today, we have more than enough technology and resources to feed every single human being on earth. So why are people still starving to death? Like in different countries around the world, even in Latin America, every day our people are starving to death, which is crazy. And a very famous economist, Amartya Sen, who received the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences, demonstrated this reality through his research. He analyzed history and he proved that famines don't usually happen in normal working democracies with free press. They only occur in places with authoritarian governments or where the rulers lack public accountability. So we can say the food is available, but the political distribution is completely wrong. The political distribution completely fails. First of all, you must be wondering what's the biggest reason why governments cannot stop famine, and it is war and conflict. And believe it or not, in many parts of the world, food is actively used as a tactical weapon. And while under international law, starving civilians is a war crime, but you know that today governments doesn't really care about that, and many governments and rebel groups just bypass these regulations. And to explain this dynamic, during a civil war, military forces frequently target agricultural infrastructure instead of just fighting enemy troops. They block food trucks, destroy water systems, and even burn agricultural fields on purpose to weaken the civilian population and to force a surrender. And we can see this happening today, like right now, in modern crises around the world, like in Sudan or in Yemen. And the issue isn't a global shortage of rice or grain. The issue is that military forces literally block the highways and ports, so humanitarian aid cannot reach the populations in need. And when a government prioritizes military dominance over keeping its own citizens alive, stopping famine become completely impossible. Another huge factor that we have to talk about is institutional corruption. Every year, rich nations and global organizations send billions of dollars in foreign aid to vulnerable countries. But what happens to that help? Well, according to reports from the World Bank, a massive percentage of that money and food never reaches the actual poor people. And why? Because corporate politicians, local warlords, or elite groups they intercept the drugs and they either steal the food to sell it on the black market for profit, or they only give food to the people who vote for them. So local governments fail to stop hunger because their internal systems are completely broken and corrupt. International organizations can send all the help they want, but if the local government is a corrupt wall, the help is useless. So after hearing all this, my colleague Jader is going to explain the economic and climate traps that make this problem even worse. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. This is Jader. So, expanding on what my classmate just explained, we need to understand that famine isn't just about bullets and corruption, and there is also a silent, structural economic problems building into the global market. It's a phenomenon called the export trap. Basically, many developing nations saw a lot of money into international banks to pay these debts. Global financial system push these poor countries to stop growing basic food for their own people and instead focus completely on cash crops. Let me give you an example to make this clear. Instead of using their best most fertile lands to grow corn, beet, or beans to feed the local population, these countries are forced to grow coffee, flowers, or avocados, or cocoa to export to wealthy Western nations. I mean, think about the irony. On paper, the country's economy looks like it is growing because they are exporting millions of dollars in premium coffee. But in reality, the local supermarkets are empty and local families cannot afford basic food. When a global crisis hits, like inflation or supply chain issues, the government are completely helpless. They don't have domestic food reserve because the entire agricultural system um, was designed to serve foreign consumers, not like their own citizens, their own people. On top of that economic trap, we absolutely have to talk about climate change and what experts call climate injustice. And here is the craziest and most unfair part of the whole situation. The countries that are suffering for the most brutal droughts and famines today are the ones that pollute the least. Regions like the Horn of Africa produce almost zero global carbon emissions, yet they are bearing the absolute brunt of environmental destruction. They are experiencing multi-year droughts where it doesn't rain for months, completely destroying livestock and turning arable land into desert. The real problem here is that all governments don't have the money or the technology to adapt to this new reality. A wealthy country like Israel or the United States can deal with a drought because they have the money to build massive water desalination plants or high-tech drip irrigation systems. But a poor government in a developing nation doesn't even have the money to buy basic seeds. They are stuck in a tragic loop. They spend all their tiny budget just trying to survive the latest climate disaster, leaving them with zero resources to prevent the next um, famine. To wrap things up and conclude our presentation, governments haven't been able to stop farming because they are only fighting the symptoms of the problem rather than the real disease. Famine is not a natural disaster that just happened because of bad luck. It is a predictable result of weaponized wars, systemic corruption, and unfair global trade rules, and climate injustice. Basically, until global leaders stop treating food as a speculative business commodity, and start to protecting it as a non-negotiable human right, this tragedy will continue. Thank you very much for your time and for listening us.